Look around! Help yourself to a virtual hobnob!
Meanwhile, at Santander, they're keeping the digital stuff simple with My Money Manager in their mobile banking app, which tells you what your money is doing and where it's going.
If you like ITV Hub, the place you go for all your favourite shows, then you'll absolutely love ITV Hub Plus. With ITV Hub Plus, you can watch everything uninterrupted, completely ad-free. Search ITV Hub Plus for your 7-day free trial and start living your uninterrupted best life.
No matter what you use to fight a cold, you could add Vicks Vapor Rub to help relieve your blocked nose, sore throat, congestion, and cough due to cold. To help you sleep like a baby. Vicks Vapor Rub.
Home insurance from LV, with prices from £95. Get cover that's right for you at a price that's right too. Buy direct at lv.com.
Even after vacuuming, your carpet is still covered in dirt. The same dirt you'd find on the street. But with Vanish Gold Carpet Care, you can lift the dirt that hoovering alone can't reach and give your carpets a deep clean. Vanish Gold Carpet Care. Trust Pink. Revive carpets. Accidental spills? Try Vanish Carpet Care and Upholstery Spray. It removes all types of stubborn stains in just 30 seconds. See? Trust Pink. Revive carpets.
And now with a look at all today's headlines, it's the very latest ITV News at 10.
Prince Philip in hospital for a second night. He was taken there last night on the advice of his doctors as a precaution after feeling unwell.
Last couple of times that I've seen him, he's absolutely ramrod back, hand behind his back, of course dressed immaculately.
The Duke will be 100 in June. Tonight he's said to be in good spirits. Also on News at 10. Boris Johnson agrees the government needs to focus on data, not dates, when deciding how to ease COVID restrictions. The future is electric. Ford forges ahead with a plan to scrap all petrol and diesel cars in 9 years. The man whose story of saving others that was told in the film Hotel Rwanda faces another real-life drama in court. And
Absolute shambles.
Excuse me, iPad 3, could we take this offline, please?
they're back. Chaos again at the country's most famous parish council. But the woman the internet went wild about was not invited.
Is there even a little part of you that wishes you were clerking at the meeting tonight?
Oh, heck no.
This is ITV News at 10 with Nina Hussain.
Good evening. Prince Philip has enjoyed good health for much of his long life, but at 99 years of age, his doctors weren't taking any chances when he complained of feeling unwell. So he's spending a second night in hospital after checking in yesterday for a few days of monitoring and rest. Buckingham Palace called it a precautionary measure and made it clear it was not COVID-related. The Prince arrived by car and walked into the hospital. He's reported to be in good spirits. The Queen and Prince Charles have been going about their normal business, suggesting they aren't too worried. He, of course, is probably wondering what all the fuss is about.
His official retirement started in August 2017 on a rainy forecourt in front of Buckingham Palace, when, at the age then of just 96, the Duke of Edinburgh stopped official engagements for good. Today's news is a reminder of his advancing years. But when he chose to come out of retirement momentarily at Windsor Castle last summer after his 99th birthday, he looked in remarkable health, sprightly even, and able to make a trademark joke. And it was from Windsor that he was driven to hospital in central London yesterday. When he got here to the King Edward VII, he walked in unaided, we are told, and his admission is not COVID-related. Whatever is wrong with him, this wasn't considered an emergency admission. And in their statement about Prince Philip at 2 o'clock this afternoon, Buckingham Palace said the Duke's admission is a precautionary measure on the advice of His Royal Highness's doctor after feeling unwell.
Last couple of times that I've seen him, he's absolutely ramrod back, hand behind his back, of course, dressed immaculately. I mean, he has a valet to help him with those things, of course, but he looks amazing. And until quite recently, of course, was still going out in all winds and weathers carriage driving, which was his great passion. And so, he has always kept extremely fit over the years. He's a great example.
When he arrived at another hospital this morning, the Prince of Wales knew about his father's admission. But Charles and Camilla's visit to a COVID vaccination trial went ahead as planned, suggesting at least no urgent behind-the-scenes changes. For the best part of a year now, the Duke of Edinburgh and the Queen have been isolating together at Windsor Castle, riding out the pandemic with a small team working on rotation. They both had their COVID vaccinations last month. And the Duke of Edinburgh has shown a remarkable ability to bounce back following medical treatment. This was him at Harry and Meghan's wedding in 2018, even though just a month before he'd had a hip replacement. And before Christmas 2019, he spent 5 days in the same hospital as now, but still managed to leave on Christmas Eve in time for the family gathering at Sandringham.
The palace has stressed all day that this is a precautionary measure. So is there any need to be too concerned tonight?
Well, look, in the course of my career and while I've been doing this particular job, I've stood outside the King Edward VII Hospital on a number of occasions. It's always struck me his ability to bounce back, that resilience that he's sort of well known for, be it that major hip operation before Harry and Meghan's wedding, be it the recurrence of a bladder infection he had one summer. So I think you should read those words that Buckingham Palace put in there for a reason, precautionary, the fact that he walked into hospital and all the rest of it. But we should not discount the fact that this is a 99-year-old man and he's 100 in June. I think the family would be very relieved there's no COVID involved here. But all the other indications we've had, be it when we saw him last summer in Windsor, or be it when I was in Windsor just before Christmas and somebody said to me, he's just been peeking out the window, he's in good health. He's been remarkably fit and well for the past year. So I think that's what we should focus on. But as I say, you don't discount that he is a very, an elderly man, a man of advanced years, and that will be the biggest concern perhaps.
Chris Shipp, thank you very much. Precautions for the Duke to caution from the Prime Minister as Mr Johnson is finding the problem with putting a date in the diary to announce a roadmap out of lockdown is that in the interim everyone tries to tell you what should happen. Soon after one scientific advisor told MPs lifting restrictions should be based on data not dates, Mr Johnson agreed. Caution and prudence were his watchwords. But another expert said it was safe to go to the beach. No outbreak had been linked to the seaside anywhere.
Is it nearly over? Well, not in Corby. The town has one of the highest rates of coronavirus anywhere in Britain.
Any symptoms? No.
Surge testing now on offer to try to drive the numbers down.
People are dropping out of work all the time with COVID, and so it needs to be a regular thing for me. This is my third test.
It does worry me a little bit, especially because some of my family members are quite vulnerable.
The higher numbers is slightly concerning, but with places like this opening up and the constant testing, it makes everyone feel a bit more at ease.
Less at ease, perhaps, those at a vaccination centre hearing the Prime Minister compare his struggle to put on gloves to that of O.J. Simpson at his murder trial.
O.J. Simpson.
An unguarded comment that he may regret. On exiting lockdown, though, words of caution.
It'll be based firmly on a cautious and prudent approach to coming out of lockdown in such a way as to be irreversible. We want to be going one way from now on, based on the incredible vaccination rollout.
Now that the top 4 most vulnerable groups have been offered a first dose of the vaccine, it looks likely that schools in England will begin reopening from March the 8th. Meanwhile, the remaining priority groups are now getting jabs, the aim to reach a total of 32 million by the end of April, with non-essential retailers expected to reopen that month. Other restrictions on socialising, hospitality and travel could then be gradually eased over the summer, with the NHS hoping to vaccinate all 54 million adults in the UK by September. For now, the numbers in hospital remain worryingly high, according to those in charge of managing the service.
We are only just now down to the level of the peak of the first wave in terms of inpatients in hospitals. So, we've got to make sure that we don't fall foul of kind of short memory syndrome.
Scientists are divided as to how quickly restrictions can be lifted.
So this is a mantra I think that you've already heard, which is let's use data, not dates. So I'm not going to say, yeah, no, it'd be fine if R was 1.1 or something like that. I think the important thing is that we watch what's happening in the real world and do our best to make judgments, probably in real time, about is this going too fast now? Do we need to pause for a while?
But another suggested some freedoms, like heading to the seaside, might come quite soon.
There were no outbreaks linked to crowded beaches. There's never been a COVID-19 outbreak linked to a beach ever, anywhere in the world.
Is it really possible that people will be allowed to mix like this again in the summer? Well, maybe if the outdoors is deemed safe. Libby Vina, News at 10.
Let's talk to Robert now, who is recording tonight's edition of Peston, which is coming up shortly. Robert, the data is changing all the time. It really will be a difficult balancing act for the Prime Minister.
It will. I mean, one of the things that was very interesting, he said he'd be led by the data, but let's be absolutely clear. In the document that he publishes on Monday, which will show us the way out of lockdown, there will be dates for when things like shops open, when we can go back to the pub and all of that, but they will be dates that say that cannot happen any earlier than that date, and those dates may indeed turn out to be much later if the data, if deaths, infections, hospitalizations all go in the wrong direction. Now, one of the things that is striking, just talk to the Israeli health minister, they are reopening their economy, easing lockdown right now, and one of the ways they're doing that is to say that you can go to the cinema or a theatre if you prove that you've had a vaccine. You show effectively what's known as a vaccine passport. I spoke to the Lord Chancellor just now, Robert Buckland. The government is opposed to a government scheme that would allow us to go back to, as I say, social venues on that basis. It doesn't want these formal passports. Now, there is therefore an issue about what the government will do if pubs and restaurants just unilaterally say that you can only go in if you can prove that you have had a vaccine or have had a test. So it all still feels very messy. Let's hope that on Monday the government or the Prime Minister can add a bit of clarity.
Yeah, let's hope. Robert, thank you very much. Thank you. As the number of first doses of vaccine here nudged 16 million, the head of the United Nations pointed out that 130 countries have not received a single dose. Antonio Guterres said that was wildly uneven and unfair. The international scramble for vaccines has gifted China a diplomatic opportunity in African countries. Consignments of free Chinese vaccine have arrived in Zimbabwe this week, where jabs are due to start tomorrow.
It was sent on Valentine's Day, and by Monday morning this gift from China to Zimbabwe had landed. 200,000 doses of the Chinese COVID vaccine. And if this gesture was about diplomacy as much as charity, it seemed to have worked.
It has not been lost on us that in time of need, China's response has been swift.
As ITV News saw today, from the gravesides of Harare, China is not seen as the villain of the pandemic. Not when it is helping to fill the global gap left by vaccine inequality. China has promised its vaccine to many developing countries across Africa and Asia, including Kenya, Zimbabwe and Vietnam. It has also said it will send millions of doses to countries which have conducted phase 3 trials, including Indonesia, Morocco and Turkey. Of course, many here will see that as a giant IOU from Beijing, an irresistible offer to win future influence in places where the need now is the greatest. The government of Zimbabwe has already accepted donations from local companies and citizens towards the vaccine effort, and in what looked like a crowdfunding appeal this month, it even shared the bank account details for anyone else wishing to do the same.
The vaccine inequality is very unreasonable. We are fighting a global pandemic. There should be a global pandemic response that involves, collaboration between countries.
At the UN Security Council today, Britain called for ceasefires so that in war zones across the world, vaccinations can take place. Despite the difficulties, the Foreign Secretary said nations had a moral duty to act, but he accepts vaccines are being treated now as an extension of international diplomacy.
I think we've seen with China and Russia, they'll use all the tools available to them to expand their influence. I think the incumbent thing on the UK, our European allies, our allies in the Commonwealth, the US, the Five Eyes, is to make sure that we provide a compelling offer to those countries most in need.
The global virus, which has already changed so much, still has the power to change the way nations see each other. Rohit Khatri, News at 10.
One of the features of the pandemic, as we have reported before, is that it has exaggerated existing trends and failings. That seems to be true for thousands of asylum seekers whose applications have been held up. They are stuck in limbo in temporary and, in many cases, unsuitable accommodation. That includes hotels around the country. Today, they were protests at just how long they are having to wait. The immigration minister told us the government would bring in new laws to speed things up later in the year.
They thought Britain would be their salvation, but for these asylum seekers, the reality has turned out to be a very long way from a promised land. Many have spent months in hotels like this one near Heathrow, with little idea of when their case will be heard, in conditions many claim are totally unsatisfactory.
We have been here for more than 6 months. There are people who have been here for 7 months, 6, 5, and we have never been contacted by Home Office.
Among them, several families with young children with little to occupy them.
It's really bad. It's like we are in prison, not in the hotel. We came here in UK because we wanted a better life. I didn't know it was going to be like this. If it was like this, I wouldn't come here.
His brother, Harriet, has brain damage, yet it was only thanks to a local church he was provided a wheelchair. A family who escaped ISIS in Iraq now feels trapped in a system they feel is utterly inhumane. Up to the year ending September 2020, there were a record number of people awaiting their asylum decision, a backlog of 60,548, with 76% of them waiting over 6 months.
The system's been at breaking point for a long time. Yes, it has got worse, and it's not got worse because the number of asylum seekers have gone up, but only just because the Home Office is just becoming more and more dysfunctional.
Campaigners say a fire started deliberately last month at Old Army Barracks housing asylum seekers near Folkestone shows how volatile the situation has become, but the government blames the pandemic for increasing delays.
We're now accommodating far more people than would ordinarily be the case, and that's caused a number of delays as well. So the pandemic has had a huge impact on the asylum system. We are working on new legislation that will be implemented and introduced later this year to make the asylum system work a lot more effectively, to get decision-making done more quickly.
But some have been waiting much longer than the 6 months, which used to be the target. Stella hasn't heard anything for 2 years.
I've been under a lot of depression, a lot of flashbacks. I don't sleep well because I feel like I'm not existing.
Lost in a system without any idea when or if she'll be allowed to stay. Dan Rivers, News at 10.
On Monday, it was Jaguar Land Rover. Today, it was Ford, the UK's most popular car builder, setting a date to stop making petrol and diesel cars in Europe. Their target, 2030, charging into an all-electric future, as its European boss put it. The timing coincides with the UK's deadline to end the sale of new petrol and diesel cars here.
It is the most popular make in the UK, and today it pressed its accelerator on the road to all electric. But Ford's announcement raises questions about whether drivers and infrastructure are ready. Electric car user Erin Baker says the time is right for this switch.
It's much higher than a petrol or diesel equivalent on sticker price or on a monthly payment plan, but you've got to take into account the total cost of ownership, and that means the running costs for an electric car are so much lower.
Ford says it will move to all electric in Europe and the UK by 2030, doubling investment to £16 billion globally. Earlier this week it was announced that all Jaguar models will be electric by 2025, and the UK government plans to ban sales of new diesel and petrol cars by 2030.
Consumers want us to go on this journey. They want zero emissions vehicles, they want sustainable vehicles, and Europe is moving fast. It's ahead of the other regions of the world, and we think we need to be on that journey with them.
This is Ford's only all-electric model currently on sale in the UK. Its German plant in Cologne is now at the centre of plans, but research will be done in the UK, and unions want jobs for the Dagenham and Halewood factories. Ford famously started with the Model T. Now it's heading for the Model E. But if we're to break free from the internal combustion engine, we're going to need an awful lot more of these. This is the first UK all-electric forecourt, part of plans to build 100 similar. But senior figures in the motor trade warn that a huge national effort is now needed.
You've got to turn around the entire infrastructure about how you charge the vehicle, manufacturing, supply chains. Instead of building engines, we've got to build batteries, and we want to build those batteries here in the UK.
As the biggest car makers go electric, it's hoped prices will drop, with an industry that's over a century old aiming to turn itself around within just a decade. Chris Troy, News at 10 in Braintree, Essex.
Next, his life story has already been made into a dramatic Oscar-nominated film. Now, Paul Rusesabagina, the manager of what in the film was called Hotel Rwanda, is facing another dangerous chapter in that story. Back in 1994, he helped protect more than 1,000 people from ethnic genocide in Rwanda. But as a long-time critic of Rwanda's President Kagame, he's found himself on trial, accused of supporting anti-government rebels.
Back in Rwanda, shackled and accused of funding terrorism, Paul Rusesabagina fled the country more than 2 decades ago. Today, he was in court with 19 other men. He insisted he'd been kidnapped and illegally brought back to face what he and his supporters claim is a show trial.
This is a 4-star hotel, not a refugee camp.
He became famous when his life was made into a film, Hotel Rwanda, highlighting his role as the hotel manager who sheltered Tutsi refugees as genocide swept the East African country in the mid-1990s. Last September, 66-year-old Rusesabagina was paraded in front of cameras after he was snatched from the streets of Dubai. His daughter told me he'd never have gone back voluntarily.
A fair trial doesn't start by kidnapping. He knew that for many years the Rwandan government has tried to kill him, has tried to assassinate him, has tried to intimidate him, and going to Rwanda, it was equivalent to a death sentence for him.
The family accused Rwanda's president, Paul Kagame, now serving a 3rd term, of brutally suppressing any criticism. Kagame first came to power as the leader of the Rwandan Patriotic Front, who defeated Hutu forces. Nowadays, he's welcomed at gatherings of world leaders, praised for bringing order to a bitterly divided country. But opponents like Rusesabagina accuse him of being a dangerous dictator. After his film role, Rusesabagina was awarded the US Medal of Freedom. Now he desperately needs other countries to come to his rescue.
He's created his entire adult life based on trying to bring about peace to Rwanda, and just for the things that he's done and what he stands for, I believe that the international community should stand up and help him.
Although he's taken on the role of outspoken critic of the Rwandan government, Rusesa Bageno is a Belgian citizen who insists he shouldn't be facing any charges on African soil. Juliet Bremner, News at 10.
The streets of Myanmar's biggest city, Yangon, were flooded again today with tens of thousands of people demonstrating against the military coup just over a fortnight ago. It's thought to have been the biggest protest yet. The UN is concerned the army could be planning a violent crackdown on the demonstrators who marched with banners calling for the release of the country's elected leader, Aung San Suu Kyi. The questions have intrigued space scientists for generations. Was there indeed, is there life on Mars? Tomorrow, a NASA spacecraft is due to land on the surface of the planet after a 6-month journey from Earth. Its mission